Welcome back to Remote Work Bay. I have Grace Hsiang of 7Till8 here with me today. Grace, thank you so much for being a part of my podcast. Could you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yep, my name is Grace. I am the co-founder and CEO of 7Till8. We are a surf company located in Los Angeles, and we specialize in making custom-tailored wetsuits. So all of our wetsuits are made to measure, and we service both the surf and dive community.
That's incredible. And are you at home right now?
I am at home right now.
I love that your top
home
is
office.
Grapes.
Yeah.
And where is home for you?
So I actually moved to Torrance a couple months ago, and I decided to move 2 to 3 minutes away from the 7Till8 studio, which is also located in Torrance.
And how has that shifted for you, having to work from home and having to move out of the city?
Yeah, so we still have the studio open, and it's been open this entire time during quarantine. So I have had access to it. But what's been interesting is, so I have a co-founder who's also my husband, and we see each other a lot. And so even during quarantine, we've kind of taken this opportunity to give ourselves some space. So actually, Andrew will be at the studio most of the time, and I'll be at home most of the time. And it's been a really interesting transition because I'm actually not used to working from home for entire days at a time. And yeah, it's been a very quiet shift.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the story behind 7Till8 and how did you get started? How did you get involved in the business?
Yeah, so my co-founder, Andrew, actually started with the product line first. So he's like a lifelong waterman, and he noticed that within surf and dive, the range of surfers, the body types are really diverse, but the product offering doesn't necessarily match. And so you have this entire category of people who can't find wetsuits off the rack. And without a wetsuit, you're essentially barred access from entering the ocean, since a wetsuit's purpose is to keep you warm in the water. And so we created a custom tailored product to allow our product to match the surfer versus having the surfer try to fit what's available in the market. And so everything we do is bespoke. And when Andrew kind of created this product line, I also saw a huge opportunity to expand the brand through our e-commerce channels. And so my background prior to 7Till8 was in e-commerce and fintech. And so I came on board to really help with the growth of the company and a lot of the strategy.
And how is it like transitioning from stable 9-to-5 job to becoming the CEO of this company?
It's a huge transition. It's a major change. I mean, I think when I worked for other companies, even though they were smaller startup companies, there was this sense of security and structure because someone else is calling the shots, making the calls, and your risk is kind of just mitigated to your own little sort of sector as an employee. But I think now as an entrepreneur, the decisions I make affect every aspect of the business. There's no roadmap, and there's definitely no sense of security. And so I think for me, it's been in the transition, it's like I have to really dig deep to find like self-confidence, self-belief, and I have to just really trust my instincts because no one is going to give me the right answer. So a lot more self-reliance, but it's also very fulfilling, and I love it.
I mean, let's dive a little deeper. Have you faced any challenges being a female entrepreneur in LA? How does that dynamic work with your husband as well?
Yeah, so I think in the beginning, there was a lot more of people just assuming that I was his helper or his assistant. But, that didn't really happen often. If anything, I think the bigger challenge is for us being in the surf industry. So, the surf industry has a lot of legacy in it, and Andrew and I coming in not only as people of color, but also people that just don't come from a surf legacy. We're essentially outsiders to this industry. And so there's been a lot of challenges. I mean, I think, the company's turning 4 this year. And I think in the beginning, it was a lot about just being validated and accepted and a lot of proof of concept. Now that we're, almost approaching 4 years, I think the challenges are all growth related. We are trying to do something that is a little different in the industry. We have a unique business model. We kind of are doing something that isn't well modeled in surf. And so everything is unknown. And, I would say challenges arise everywhere from like supply chain to growth to now sustainability is like a huge thing that we talk about. So yeah, every day is a challenge.
Right. And speaking of challenges, is 7Till8 like thriving or surviving during this pandemic? And how have you had to pivot your business, or have you had to pivot your business at all during this global pandemic?
So yes and no. So, in the beginning of the pandemic, I think the biggest issue that we saw was that, we have actually two revenue streams. One is our brand 7Till8, which is direct to consumer and e-commerce. But the second arm that we have is actually B2B, where we make wetsuits for other brands. And so at the beginning of the pandemic, we basically saw the B2B part of our company just vanish overnight. All deals that were in the pipeline, just everyone pulled back. And so, of course, there was a significant hit to our revenue. But I think what we were surprised by is that in the pandemic, we've definitely seen more consumers in the ocean getting into surfing. And so surfing on our consumer side has actually done really well. So right now we're actually, we've surpassed our revenue year over year on that side. So the brand itself is doing really well, which is really exciting for us because that's our baby. In terms of pivoting, so we haven't had to really pivot. It's more like we've had to run leaner, lean into what works, and kind of double down on the things that, are working in the pandemic.
Yeah, that's probably the case because everyone's stuck at home and they can't travel. And now that beaches are open, that's probably helping your market as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you see people learning how to surf and picking up surfing because they're stuck in their cities?
Yeah, I think for sure, like summertime, you always see people in California that want to learn to surf. So that's pretty normal. But I think what we're really seeing is that because people can't travel internationally to like exotic surf destinations in like Nicaragua or Bali, you're seeing a lot of surfers just appreciate their local breaks, so they're staying close to home, they're getting in the water, they're appreciating places that aren't necessarily like traditional hotspots for summer surf vacations. But that's great, and I think the water is more crowded than ever. So I myself have had a lot more time to get in the water and surf this year. And yeah, it's definitely packed, which is encouraging. And also it's packed with like new faces. So I think there's new people entering the water, and it's always exciting to see kind of a new demographic enter the water.
Where do you surf?
So I surf. So I'm in Torrance in the South Bay. So my two favorite spots are in Palos Verdes and in San Onofre.
It's the same for me. I don't usually get in the water during the summer because I'm traveling somewhere in Europe or Asia, right? And for like the first time this actually in like years, I got into the water and kayaked in Malibu.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was so fun. I mean, if it wasn't for this pandemic, I don't know that I would have done that. I would probably have been traveling around Europe right now.
Yeah, totally.
So where do you eventually see 7Till8, long-term wise? You've been around for 4 years now, which seems like you guys have been around for much longer because of your brand presence. So congratulations on that. But in the next couple of years, where do you want to take this company?
Well, that's a good question. So two things. So, we started, a lot of companies in surf are actually lifestyle brands. So clothing, accessories. For us, we actually started off with a very specific focus, which is just wetsuits. We decided to really become the master at one very technical product. And, it's something that we want to just maximize the opportunity in terms of product innovation, in terms of how we create the products in our supply chain and our production. And so I think there's still a lot of areas to explore just in wetsuit production. So we do see ourselves, we look at brands like Montclair, Arc'teryx, just really premium, top of the line technical brands. And we aspire to be like them. So I think in the next few years, we'll continue just digging into that to just becoming masters at our craft. But simultaneously, we are starting to really invest in our brand. We have a story that we want to tell, and we think it's a compelling story. We think we're doing really exciting things for our industry. And so in the next few years, we'll also be expanding our brand presence. Right now we're finally kind of solidifying a visual brand identity, which means we're getting kind of a blueprint for like what our product roadmap is going to look like. So really exciting, but ultimately getting better and expanding the product line.
And who's your current target demographic?
So our customer tends to be a very experienced surfer or diver who has gone through a few wetsuits and understands how an improper fit is affecting their performance. And they kind of already know that not only is custom fit the way to go, but our company has a pretty strong reputation with construction and material as well. So the second type of customer we get is someone who's newer to surfing, but also wants to start just with the best gear possible. They want something made to measure. And both of these types of surfers tend to be 35 plus. They tend to be well-traveled. They tend to have a rather high disposable income. And most importantly, they are people who just take their craft and their sport very seriously. This is not really the casual surfer or diver, but it's really the person who, regardless of skill level, is very dedicated. They're in the water multiple times a week, taking multiple trips. And they just want the best gear that they can have.
And would you say most of your customer base is on the West Coast?
Actually, it's not. We have a global presence. So we've sold to about 36 different countries now.
Wow.
Yeah. But the top DMAs for us are still Los Angeles, San Francisco, and then third would be New York, actually.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Is there countries that you're looking to expand to? What's next on the roadmap?
So, we actually did spend some time last year in Korea exploring the market there as a potential new market. And I think what we learned is, there's a lot of possible opportunities to expand overseas. I think Taiwan is a very serious consideration. Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and potentially Canada are all places we've identified. But really, I think in both the pandemic and understanding our brand, we still see like a ton of opportunity domestically. So, we're going to continue to really invest in the e-commerce part of it to allow ourselves to remain global. But also, I think there's a lot of awareness to be done here in the States still.
Right. And e-commerce is doing particularly well right now because of the stimulus. But we'll see what happens in the next quarter, right?
I know. Yeah.
Right. I mean, speaking of the stimulus, where are you finding support and resources and community as a small business owner in LA? I mean, did you apply for the PPP loan? And if you did, how was that process?
So we did apply for the PPP loan and we did receive it. So, I mean, I think in terms of the pandemic, talking about like March, I think we were pretty lucky because even though we did see like our B2B revenue kind of deplete overnight, we have a very lean business model and we are used to looking for financing. And so as soon as the PPP announcement kind of came out, we just fully all hands on deck started applying. It was very challenging to get a response, but luckily, I think we applied to, I want to say 20 different banks.
Wow.
Just because we weren't sure who was really going to know how to get this done. And it was very surprising. I think out of all the banks, only 2 came through for us. So we ended up choosing the best offer. The process was painful, but I'm grateful we got it. I'm very grateful.
How long did it take from the day you applied?
I want to say maybe 2 months.
Okay, that's a while.
Yeah.
Wow. I know a lot of friends that are small business owners in LA that are still trying to get that loan.
Yeah, we got very lucky because, we have experience applying for funding. And so I think the hardest part of PPP was there was just a ton of documentation that was required. But because we had already gone through the experience of looking for funding, we had everything well organized and made the process a lot better for us.
And PPP loan, for some details on it, I mean, how long will that keep you afloat, and what are some of those requirements to get that loan?
Yeah, so for the PPP loan, you basically have to use it on payroll. It's used to retain employees. And then I think 25% of it can also be used on things like rent for your office. Mm-hmm. And so you can either apply at the time, I think you could either apply for an 8-week package or a 24-week. And so at the time we had applied for the 8-week one. We knew that for us, our down season was the spring. So April, May, right when the pandemic hit. And so we had PPP basically carry us over for those 2 to 3 months.
Got it. Well, thank goodness you got that loan. And I mean, just like overall, where outside of the pandemic and what's happening right now, as a small business owner, where do you find support and community, generally speaking, in the city?
Yeah, I mean, especially now, it's like, it is a little hard to feel connected to people because before there'd be like events, there'd be, catch-ups, and now, all of that is gone. So all support is very personal or very virtual. So for us, I mean, one is we were part of an accelerator in 2018 called Grid 110. And so Grid 110, we continue to be active in, and they've just been really amazing. I think from day one, they started blasting resources for funding, for PPP all over the Slack channel. I also have a mentor from an organization called the Bixel Exchange. And as my finance mentor, my mentor was able to just really guide me through the process, what his thoughts are, and it just really comforted me a lot because these loans were kind of everywhere, but no one knew how to proceed. So Bixel and Grid 110 are both 2 nonprofit, no cost, no equity accelerators in LA. And both of them have just been amazing support systems for me during this time.
Mm-hmm. How did you find them? Is it just through word of mouth? How did you get involved, and how did you find this mentor?
Yeah, so with Grid 110, they have 2 cohorts a year. And so I found out about it through word of mouth in 2018 and applied in, they have an application process. I got accepted into the fall 2018 cohort, and it was really awesome. I'm still in touch with some of the other entrepreneurs in that program. And then through Grid 110, Grid 110 kind of has more of a group format where, you meet in groups. But I was also looking for some more one-on-one support, and I got referred to Bixel Exchange through Grid.
And do you think that with the help of these organizations, they really helped you propel your business and you as a young entrepreneur? Do you think that's a big part of why you are where you are today?
Oh, 100%. I mean, something like Grid 110 is really special because they specifically focus on businesses that are not only run by women or people of color, but they actually look at businesses that are considered traditionally unfundable. So people with business models that might not necessarily get a home run with a VC, but still very much are viable businesses. And so through Grid 110, they've also grown since I've joined. It's just like a wealth of resources. And I think because it's a community of entrepreneurs where, it's being supported by a nonprofit structure to begin with, there is a definite energy of support. People there are very forthcoming. And through Grid 110, I've gotten tons of opportunities to other networks. So through Grid 110, for example, Andrew and I had the opportunity to go to Korea for 4 months last year. We were invited by the Korean government as part of a startup program, and we got to live in Korea for 4 months. And then through that program is how we met our seed investors. And through our seed investors, I was referred to the Tory Burch Foundation. And I just recently found out that I've also been selected as one of the female CEOs for their program. So all of these projects, I would say Grid 110 definitely was the catalyst for a lot of these resources.
Could you send me the links and I could put in the links below?
Yeah, it's a lot, I know.
I know, like so many things to remember, and these are such helpful resources as an entrepreneur and people that are thinking about wanting to get into entrepreneurship in LA.
Yeah, I think Grid 110 is a gem. Like they're such an amazing resource. I mean, ever since I've joined it, I've referred other people to do it. And, it's just usually there's so many accelerators in LA, and a lot of them want equity. A lot of them want a piece of the pie before you even know if you can trust them.
Yeah.
And I think, it's very scary to give up any piece of your company that you work so hard for. So when you have a resource that's no cost, no equity, I mean, you just really feel like they're behind you, with no other intention except to see you grow.
Right. And I've heard of so many different entrepreneur organizations, but most of them cost membership fees. This is incredible information to know for anyone that wants to start a business or find a mentor for their small business.
Yeah, I mean, I think with accelerators, or at least in my experience, the most helpful aspect is just talking to other entrepreneurs. Like I have my friends, I have my family, but no one really understands like the turmoil and the pain except another entrepreneur. And when you're in an accelerator like that and all of you come from different industries, there's no competition. It's just pure support, and everyone is just wanting the other to succeed. So it's just like a really strong support network that's probably more therapeutic most of the times than anything.
Yeah. Right. Everyone needs a little bit of therapy in their lives, right? Personal and business.
For sure.
So let's go back to the surf industry. So considering how hard so many of these industries were hit this year, how do you think it's going to affect the trends of the surf industry in the next year? And do you see significant difference in industry trends from the US versus other countries, considering we're all in different phases of reopening?
So it's interesting that you asked that question, because even prior to the pandemic, the surf industry was kind of going through a transition. So, if you look at the surf industry, the big companies that really dominate this industry are like Quicksilver, Billabong, Hurley, Roxy. And a lot of these brands are actually owned by conglomerates. And so it's really like big companies that are really kind of ruling the surf industry. And they're not necessarily doing well. So I think what the pandemic has done is just accelerated the timeline of what was going to be inevitable in the surf industry. And I do think that in 2021, we are going to see like a bit of a renaissance in surf. I'm seeing tons of small businesses come into the space. It's really diverse. It's really exciting. And I think the surf industry is going to become pretty fragmented, where it's kind of like fashion. There is a fashion brand for every person out there to express themselves in a unique way. And I think surf is going to be like that. We are seeing surf really diversify. It's no longer just this like stereotypical, like hippy dippy kind of vibe. Like you're seeing all kinds of brands influenced by streetwear, influenced by punk, coming into this space. And I think as surfing as a culture starts to shift and morph, I think the brands that represent it are also, it's going to be really exciting. So I think we're very lucky that I think it's a great time to be a young independent brand in a space like this.
Right, especially since there's like millennials want to feel different. They want to have something unique to themselves, right? So they're probably not going to want to be purchasing like a generic brand. And yeah. And so I feel like with your business model, especially in California, people that can afford to pay for your wetsuits, it's probably booming.
Yeah. I mean, I think what's cool too is that like, traditionally surf does cater to a more youth market. So to your point, millennials are not teenagers now. Millennials are, I think the oldest millennials now 40. So right. So they're not wanting to wear something that's really kind of targeting a teenager from San Clemente. A lot of them are grown adults that care very much about surf, but want something that actually represents like them and their lifestyles and how they live in other areas of their life, clothing wise, lifestyle wise. So our aesthetic is a little bit more sophisticated. It's a little bit more subtle. And we are also millennials. So we're designing a brand that we would wear.
Right. And millennials also focus on, eco-friendly, sustainability. Where does your material come from?
So most neoprene, so wetsuits are made out of neoprene, and most commercial neoprene is actually made out of petroleum. Okay. And Yeah, our wetsuit materials is actually sourced from limestones, like the rock. And so we source all our neoprene, our limestone-based neoprene from Japan. And it's from a corporation called the Yamamoto Corporation that's been basically producing for several generations. It's really cool.
Wow. Wow. So the actual wetsuit's made out of limestone.
Yeah, it's a limestone-based neoprene.
So interesting. And is it manufactured in Japan as well?
Correct. Yeah. So we
Okay.
source all our materials from Japan. We build all our wetsuits in Thailand, and then we design and QC and repair everything in LA. So our supply chain actually spans 3 different countries.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you talk about sustainability. That's also why we've adopted a made to measure model. We want to make sure to eliminate any material waste. We want to make sure not to have like an excess of inventory. So we are trying to be conscious of, how can we do this the most efficient way possible, because we are, transporting these materials across the world.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. Has the pandemic affected your supply chain at all?
Definitely. I would say, our business is a little unique because unlike other companies that may order their inventory for the season and then ocean freight it over for a better rate, we're a little different because we're doing small batch production every week and shipping every week, right? Because we're essentially turning around a wetsuit to the customer every 4 weeks. And
Wow.
so because of that, we've seen extreme delays from overseas. And I think even just now shipping rates have fluctuated more than ever. So for people who are in like supply chain, air freight rates are just insane. We've seen them double compared to last year. And
Wow.
so, yeah, and so, it's a little bit better now, but I would say shipping products has definitely been a challenge that I think everyone is facing right now.
And are you as a company having to eat those costs, or are you having to add to the customer's costs?
So we've definitely been eating the cost. We have not passed this on to the customer. It's not really how we like want to treat our customer. It's not their fault. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's been pretty crazy. I mean, I'm sure you've heard in the news about USPS kind of.
Yeah, I've been
So
affected by USPS too.
yeah, so we personally been affected by USPS. I mean, we probably had 6 different wetsuits lost through nobody's fault except USPS.
Oh no.
And each of our wetsuits averages about $600. And so as a company that puts their customer first, we've also had to replace all those products free of charge to the customer. So
Oh
yeah,
gosh.
it definitely affected us, and it's definitely not easy, but I think all things considering, kind of
Mhm.
just have to roll with it. Yeah.
I guess at this point you just have to insure all your packages, especially if it's going through USPS.
Yes, we have stopped shipping USPS completely.
Who do you use now?
So we use a mix. We use FedEx, we use UPS, and then we also use a few other services for our B2B side where the shipments are larger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right.
I would just recommend not using USPS for now.
Same. I think I ordered something from Australia 2 months ago, and it's still not here. So
Yeah, we had someone ship us something. So we're in Torrance. We had someone ship us something from Santa Monica, and it took 3 weeks.
Santa Monica. You
Yeah,
might as well have gotten in your car.
exactly. We could have walked from Santa Monica to Torrance in 3 weeks.
And I mean, there's no traffic now in LA, so probably way faster.
So much faster.
Wow. Well, hopefully things get better and you guys will not have to encounter these ridiculous issues with USPS, and hopefully it gets better with supply chain as well. But I'm glad that your overall business is doing pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's been challenges. I mean, I think no one has been exempt from that, but overall, as a small business that does run really lean, I think that we're just overall very grateful to have had the opportunities we've had, like getting PPP is no easy feat.
Yeah.
Getting funding during a time where everyone's looking for funding is not easy. And I think just making sales right now, all of those small things, like we're not taking it for granted.
Yeah.
And so it's really just kind of opened our eyes and made us really grateful for some of the things we have done well, like being lean, having a very, very lean supply chain model. it's made us really flexible and adaptable. So yeah, I think all things considering, we're still pretty grateful with how this year is going.
Right. And I think the key word is staying lean. So
Totally.
that's really, I mean, that's what you have to do in this pandemic, right? And I feel
Yeah.
like that's where you're going to survive. For
Yeah.
sure. So, right, right. So I wanted to shift the conversation a little bit, considering this is a remote work channel.
Yeah.
And I want to hear about your setup. So tell me about your home setup right now. How has your setup shifted now that you're working from home? And when you do travel and work at the same time, like give me like a picture of what that looks like.
So typically, I am in the studio half the week to
Mm-hmm.
take meetings or to meet customers or, just kind of putz around in the studio. Over there, we have an open office layout.
Okay.
We have standing desks for everyone and dual monitors. But at home, since I've only lived in this apartment for a few months now, it's pretty simple. I've got my dual monitors, which definitely need.
Yeah.
And I have a separate office space. I have a second office space, and I keep it all pretty minimal, just so when I'm in the office, it's like I kind of am telling my brain, like, this is work.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, my setup is pretty simple. Just dual monitors, mouse, laptop, keep it pretty lean. And when I travel, it's kind of become the same thing. I just need a dual monitor and my wireless mouse. I'm pretty good.
Did you have that when you were in Korea?
So when we were in Korea, it's pretty exciting. We actually, part of the program was we had access to a campus.
Oh.
So we had everything we needed was there. Printers, Wi-Fi, dual monitors. That was my first time living abroad. And, to be honest, if we had not had that campus as a resource, I think it would have been very hard to get in the zone, just because, when I do travel to like Thailand or Japan for business trips, I'm usually working out of a hotel or a coffee shop.
Yeah.
And, for someone who desperately relies on their dual monitor, that's not really ideal. But yeah, our campus in Korea was pretty sweet. We were very lucky.
Do you ever use co-working spaces when you travel?
So I don't use co-working spaces when I travel, but when I was part of Grid 110, we did have access for 3 months to cross campus in downtown LA.
Right.
So I did go often to take meetings and just to have some shift of kind of like my environment. But generally speaking, I primarily work in the studio, and we moved to the South Bay so we could access the studio more often.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I had no idea that was your setup in Korea. That's pretty sweet.
Oh, it was pretty good. I mean, we also, just to give some color, we were there with in the program. They invited 40 companies from around the world. So not only was there a campus with all resources, but we were there with 39 other companies. So we're constantly just surrounded by like this entrepreneurial energy.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was kind of like a co-working space.
That's really cool. From what I'm hearing, the co-working spaces are open back up.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
I didn't know that. I was talking to someone else in a previous interview, and he normally works at WeWork, but he still doesn't feel safe enough to go back into the WeWork in Santa Monica.
I see.
So he's just working from home, but apparently they're open. I'm wondering like how they're social distancing people.
Yeah, I mean, our studio is really hard to beat right now. You definitely have to come visit it because we've been told by a few doctors, it's very COVID friendly, just because it's an open air environment. We've got really high ceilings. So, I mean, we can have probably up to 6 people in there, and still everyone would have like more than enough space. So, as meetings pick up, I'll probably be heading back into the studio more.
I would actually come visit you.
You should come visit. Because I think you would like co-working there. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, and you've kept all your workers too.
We have. Mm-hmm. So going back to it, like we do run lean to begin with. Mm-hmm. So even prior to COVID, we primarily work with freelancers and contractors.
Yep.
And so because of that, we only had one in-house employee that, we had to consider. And yes, we definitely kept him on. Mm-hmm. And actually we've made some additional hires since.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Wow. that's definitely not like that's very special to, I think, to your company, because a lot of people have been laying people off. But
Yeah.
again, I think because you got the PPP loan and a lot of that has to go to salary, that probably helps out a lot as well.
Yeah, and I think for us, when COVID happened, it was like we had to take a step back and ask ourselves, as much as our business is getting impacted, we also have roles as business owners in this economy. And right now, I think it is really important for business owners to step up and help contribute to the economy, even though they're hurting. And so for us, because we were in a position to do so, we thought that the best use of the funding we had would to put it back into the economy by hiring people. And because there's so much talent out there right now, as a business owner, it's actually like a great time to be hiring because you have, a fantastic pool of people that are eager and willing.
And looking for jobs.
Yes, and looking for jobs, yeah.
So do you see yourself staying in California, in Southern California region, considering technically you could be anywhere in the world? Yeah. So what do you think about the situation, and where do you think you'll be staying?
It's a very good question. It's still TBD. I mean, what was really incredible for us is last year we did, run the company for 4 months from a foreign country. And so we did get to really test out how that would work. And we learned a lot about what it would be like to run a company remotely. I think knowing our experiences, we still think that it's better for us to be here when the company is going through such a growth stage. But I definitely see us kind of as we grow as a company. I don't think it's out of the question that we'd be working remotely for months at a time from other places. I mean, the company has proved that it could run under a model like that.
Where are you going to go first then?
Where I'm going to go? Yeah, definitely.
Question.
Definitely Taiwan.
Oh yeah.
So actually, Taiwan has an amazing surf scene.
Right.
Yeah, and Taiwan is still a bit under the radar. So similar to Korea, which also has like a pretty sweet little surf scene. I'm curious about, not only the surf in Taiwan, but the industry in Taiwan, and yes, I'm Taiwanese. So obviously I have personal reasons for wanting to go too.
Right. I'm sure you miss the night market food.
Oh my God. So much. So much.
I'm like, I can't wait to get on a plane and travel somewhere outside of this country.
I miss Asia so much. Like living in Asia was probably one of the most it was just one of the best experiences of my life. And it's kind of crazy that we got back to America right when the virus hit, just a month or two before. And yeah, I'm just so grateful that we even got to do that because now all my trips internationally have been canceled.
Same. I had to cancel so many different trips this year that were in the books. I had 5 weddings that were canceled. That was
my goodness.
Yeah, so you're lucky you got married.
How long did it take you to cancel all your trips?
Well, I think I was pretty lucky. I normally use the same airlines for like domestic flights.
Oh, okay.
I had international flight or international trips in the books, but I didn't actually book any of them yet. So I was pretty lucky on that front. But that's one of the big reasons why I love Southwest, because even pre-pandemic, you can cancel a Southwest flight on the day of.
Yeah.
I had hundreds of dollars in Southwest credits that I could use at some point.
At some point.
Yeah, at some point. I'm not sure when that's going to be, but all things considered, I think we're very lucky to be in California and quarantined here because our city is just and our state is so beautiful. There's so much.
You were talking about remote working earlier, and even though I live like 2 minutes from my studio, I've actually never spent this much time like remotely working from that studio. And I think one thing that I've learned in the pandemic is like I'm so grateful, like you said, to be in California. Like we have amazing resources to like produce fresh, beautiful produce. And it's like working from home, having the opportunity to like make a beautiful meal and just have the time to do things like that. And then go for a surf session after work. I mean, it's pretty hard to complain, like my remote situation has been pretty pleasant. So
yeah, same here. I I literally just went to Joshua Tree and Big Bear for the first time last week.
No way. First time?
First time. And it was
Wait, Joshua Tree?
Yes.
What?
And you know what it is? I always have things to do in Palm Springs. There's always some reason why I have to be there. And somehow I just never made it out to Joshua Tree. I'm sad I didn't, but I'm so glad I finally did because
oh my God, Joshua Tree is so beautiful.
Stunning. Absolutely stunning. And I'm so obsessed. I'm like, let me save up some money so I can invest in some property there because it's so cheap and there's so much land and it's just I love the desert. I'm definitely a desert girl. Desert / ocean. I like both those scenes.
You know, one thing that's been really cool is like part of quarantine is that because I do have so much more time in the day that's cut out from meetings or commuting to meetings and things like that. I've just been spending more time at beaches, and I've been going to beaches that I never been to before. We got like a state pass or state beach pass. And so because the traffic hasn't been that bad, I've been able to go to places like South Orange County or Ventura to surf. Normally, you know, that would take like a ridiculous amount of time, but the traffic's like cut in half now.
Right. I will say though, there's still a ton of traffic in Malibu because I was like, wow, I thought we were in a pandemic, but everyone's in Malibu and Santa Monica. So
I haven't got to Ventura. I went to Ventura a lot during lockdown quarantine, but not so much since.
Yeah. You know, I think because the beaches are open back up, everyone's there now. And there's probably more people.
There is for sure. Yeah.
Than like usual summer day.
Yeah. But you know, it's like pretty interesting because like, it's not like I didn't have the option to do all of this pre-quarantine, but it's like now that we're in this like new normals type of situation, it has forced me to like restructure my own daily routines, you know? And it's like, why can't I go to the beach and leave just half an hour early? You know, I think before I was maybe this is left over from being an employee, but I had this very regimented schedule of like I have to be at my computer at this time, I can only clock out at this time. And now, you know, I'm questioning a lot of that and saying like, as long as, you know, what's the best schedule for me, you know?
Right. And you're probably figuring that out as, you know, as this whole pandemic is happening as well, and you're shifting to working more remotely than you.
Yes, definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Grace, for being a part of my podcast. I hope to see you in person soon.
Yes.
And good luck with the business. And I hope to come check out your office at some point.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. This is fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Grace.
All right. Bye.